Well, hello, Rob. Today we are not doing a game.
We are not.
We are not. In fact, today we are talking about the fall of Western civilization, the end of art, and the death of the human soul.
I do
But
think, for the record, there are board games based on all three of those topics, though.
That's probably true. But today we are talking about AI text generation and text prediction, and talking about it specifically in the genre of writing stories. I have been trying to write stories, some not very successfully, but I do enjoy it, and I do enjoy writing. And I have found this new tool, and we're going to talk about it. So. A lot of people are focusing on Chat GPT, which is you tell it to write something, and then it spits out a text. Yes. I am using NovelAI, which is a more collaborative tool. It's more designed to sort of work with you to make a story.
Mm-hmm.
It also has a lot more, it lets you get down underneath the hood a little bit more and modify how it works. So you have a lot more control over how that works.
Okay.
And so I'm going to walk through it, and we're going to start off from just the get-go. We're logged into NovelAI. That's what you're seeing right here.
All right.
And this is a blank story that I started up. So what NovelAI is a text prediction program. So it takes what you put into it. It has a lot of information from the internet, and it predicts what the next thing's going to be. It's tooled specifically for storytelling, so it goes in story mode most of the time. But the way you can start off here is you simply type in some text. So you can say, it was the best of times, it was the worst of times. And you can type that in. All right, fine. Fine, I'll do it. I'll be more original. It was a dark and stormy night. A shot rang out. There we go. No one has ever written that before. So you put in some text, and then you hit the send button. And so what this will do is it will then take a look at that text and say, what is things I could write with this? So here it comes down. The rain came down in torrents. Thunders boomed across the sky. Lightning crackled and lit up the room with blue light every few seconds as the wind howled through the broken windows of the house. And so then you can say, all right, I want to write more. Or you can say, hey, I like where this is going. And you can click send again and see what else it spits out. I shivered under an oversized jacket. Now, this is something weird that they've added. I want to talk about this guy down here. This is they've added a little peanut gallery that comments on your text as you write.
Okay, because that's what every author needs.
And it's the weirdest thing, where it just comes in and says, hey, that sounds kind of nice, that hot cup of coffee. And that's this has no part of the program. This is just them being weird, and it's not intrusive. You just have to ignore the crazy person that pops up.
Okay.
But so it goes through. I shivered in an oversized jacket that would have been too much, have been more appropriate for late summer than winter. My feet were cold. Blah blah blah. So it's talking. It's going into cold. Now you can look at this and you say, I don't want this to be first person. So I can go up here and I say, Bob the plumber shivered under an oversized jacket. So one of the things that's nice about this over the chat programs is you go back and edit things as it goes along. And by editing it, you're changing the context. And as the story grows, it gets more and more information and hopefully gets more in the groove of things. Um, and I shivered under and then I looked out. I shivered under an oversized jacket would be more important for late summer than winter. Well, oversized jacket doesn't make sense. So I say uh, a thin cotton jacket. So you go back, you can say, and then I'm like, oh, my feet were cold. I don't
Okay.
like that, and so I pull that out and I delete. I do my edits and I hit send, and then it will give me something else.
So
I side and
it's
set
still sold
aside.
on this first person
Uh,
thing.
it's still sold on this first person, and so I may have to go back a couple of times and sort of get it into his head. However, if it does something I just think is wrong, I can
Okay.
say retry. So down here is the retry button. Um, I stood in it. Whoa. Okay. This story took an interesting turn.
What have you been teaching this
Let's.
AI to write, Eric?
This comes from the internet. Blame the internet, my friend. uh, let's retry that. His arms were wrapped around himself, trying to keep warm. So now I hit retry a couple of times, and the retries actually go into memory. So every time you tell it to retry, it's like, oh, that was wrong. I'm going to correct
Okay.
where I'm going. So his arms were wrapped around me and myself, trying to keep warm as he watched me dig a hole. Well, it's still first person, so I would have to really get into this. But there are other things we can do to fix this. So
Okay.
that's the basics of this. But the thing is, you can make a pretty decent story here with this, and it can do some interesting things. Um, so I'm going to go to a different story I came up. This is where this program really excels is with
Hmm.
descriptions. So I have this random sort of thing about a woman named Dewey, a girl named Dewey, growing up on the streets of Jakarta. Um, and what I did is I started writing a sentence, but the point where there would be a description, I just stopped. And so now I'm going to send that, and the program should spit out a description for me,
Hmm.
just whole cloth. Um, and so it's very good at just sort of um, filling in the description. Now, this program alternates between no chill and way too much chill. In that, well, you saw with that sex scene, I hit send and it's like, oh, naked person, and porn right out because that was its no
Okay.
chill mode. That was I'm going to put in something random really rapidly and not build up to it. The other thing it does is it can get stuck in just describing forever. So if I keep on sending, it's just going to keep on describing this character.
So
Um,
I guess that's like my big
yeah.
big question with this is how do you get plot into this?
You have to be the one to write the next beat. So, um, so here we have a whole bunch of things about Dewey, but then I would say, then her life changed the day she met Timothy in the market. And this will prompt it, oh, I'm going on to something else. It will see that and it will say, oh, um, something else has to
Okay.
happen here. Nearer home. He was older here, and so now he's it's going on to describe Timothy, and then I would say, okay, that's enough, and then I would say she I would go and say she tried to steal a coin from his pocket, but he caught her hand. Now, let's say I wanted to start
Hmm.
doing dialogue. Well, then I would put in a quote, and that would indicate, oh, now I'm supposed to do dialogue. And so now it will go into that, and it will go into a dialogue mode. So it's the way you use this is you start a sentence and then don't
Okay.
complete it. And that tells it, oh, I'm supposed to go into this. And it doesn't do
Hmm.
plot. You have to be the plotter in here. If you come in here and see right now, this is going to go nowhere because I just put in random text and I have no idea what it's
Right.
about. And if I don't come into this with a plan, it's just going to ramble. I have to know where I'm going in the chapter. I'm using this to optimize the in betweens. I go beat, 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 and I have it fill in all of the in between stuff, and then you go back and edit because sometimes it will say crazy things. I was doing a Tolkien one, and it was having hobbits turn to stone in the sun, and it was like, wait, hobbits? And I
Close.
compare it to I was comparing. I'm writing with J.R.R. Tolkien, but he's playing a video game at the same time. You know, and it's like, hey Jay, what happens next? I don't know. They turned to stone in the sun. The hobbits? Oh yeah, sure, whatever. Went.
I will say that this description is very interesting to me because, like,
Yep.
one of the reasons I really fell into enjoying writing screenplays way back when is all of the boring bits of prose, right?
Yep.
So a screenplay, you don't have to do all of that. You really
Yep.
just do the very basic description of action and the dialogue, and you don't have to figure out how to get a paragraph to get from here to there.
Yep.
And taking some of that work out of the process, that's really intriguing.
Yeah. No, it is it is very if you are willing to engage with it.
Mhm.
If you know with Chat GPT, you just say do something and it spits it out. This is you have to engage it. You are playing an improv game
Mhm.
with it. You are saying um, you're giving it something and then it will say yes then.
Right.
You know, and so I could continue on to build this story. Um, Sometimes I'll have to go back and write several paragraphs because it will get stuck in a
Mhm.
mode, and sometimes I can let it go. Sometimes it introduces interesting elements. It's really good for writer's block. If you are blocked on something, you go in and you just hit send and retry a couple of times, and it will fix it up. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So now we're going to talk. That's the basics of how this works. One other thing I did want to mention is that you can come in here, give it nothing, and just say, start writing something.
But that seems a little scary.
And it starts a writing prompt. The problem being the kind of person who can get by on very little sleep is it makes you good at pretending to be asleep when people are talking about things you don't want to hear. And I'm like, okay, that's an interesting start to a story.
Hmm.
I mean, I'm
Okay.
engaged. Now, if I keep on hitting send, it will ramble on forever. Um, I could have gone to the kitchen for snacks, but instead I curled up in blankets and pretended to snore loudly until he stops talking. And it will just go on and on and on, and it will get it doesn't have arcs built into it yet.
Right.
So it won't do that. But that's your job. You are providing the vision for it, and it is filling in the drudge work.
Right.
Or even if you're stuck, you come in and you say, "All right, give me something to start with," and then you can write off of that. So it's that's the basics of the tool. Now, there are ways to guide it. So first off, I'm going to talk about memory and author's notes.
Okay.
Okay. So memory is a weak reminder. Anything you write in memory, it kind of remembers the story is about. So you can say, a story of lost loves finding themselves, finding each other after many years. Now, there is a trick for this program. If something isn't literally supposed to be read as text, you put it in square brackets, and that tells it its context.
Okay.
Don't think this is part of the story. Think this is guidelines.
Okay.
So memory is considered to be at the top of the story. So it reads the story, reads the whole text that it has, and then puts in something new. So memory is giving it a general guideline saying, hey, don't forget, and I can put in, character John Smith. And that will remind it to character.
Okay.
And I can put in these tags. Now, because memory is weak, it may not actually do this.
Mm-hmm.
But if I hit send, it should. John's life was going along, swimming along. He had a daughter, and his daughter wasn't dating any creeps, and he enjoyed occasional sexual revenue with Mary, who worked at a hair salon. So already we're starting about John. We're it is setting it up sort of for a romance. And so it will go in and it sort of remembers what's in there. And this will be throughout the whole story. It will never forget that John Smith is a main character in this story, which is something it will do if you're just letting it run unfettered. Right. Author's notes looks the exact same as memory, works the exact same memory, but it counts at the very bottom. So it's the most immediate. So this is where you would say, style romance. And, you could say style, I don't know if it's style, but I'm just going to put in first person. So this is where you would put in things, hey, don't forget, this is exactly what you got to do in the next sentence.
Okay.
And so hopefully, I mean, this is rolling a dice with this thing, because sometimes it will just go off in a weird direction. But yeah, so now you see, it's been a while since I saw my ex-girlfriend. She was the girl I loved and got to know first as my girlfriend in high school, but we didn't last long enough for me to remember her face. So it's taking the memory and it's also taking the author's note, but the author's notes are immediate. So this is where the actual work comes in. Building the memory, building the author notes, building the structure of the story before you get in here. And so this is where the skill comes in to sort of set up the context, and you can do that with these two things. And that they will know what they will keep your story on track at least a little bit. You still have to have the plot in your head. Um, so that's something that you have to do.
That does
Does
make
that make sense?
sense. That's really interesting.
Okay. Okay. So let me tell you about the future, because we're now going to talk about what the future of these tools are. Because the future of these tools is not going to be writing stories; it's going to be creating worlds.
Mhm.
This is going to be the point where the world builders come in and they finally get their day. You know, because as these tools improve, writing the story is going to be easy, but building the world's going to be difficult. And this is with the idea of lore books. So this is a a beginning of a story that has a lore book from Forgotten Realms. Lore books are down here in this little book
Okay.
icon, and someone actually went through the Forgotten Realms sort of bestiary, and you can see that for each one they put in a lore book, a entry. So they have the title up here. The title is just for humans. That doesn't do anything in it. They have what the only thing that counts in the lore
Okay.
book is this text. This text is read as being part of whatever associated word is with it. And so whenever the system sees the associated word, it's going to read this text as if it's written in. And the way it knows where to go is that each one of these entries has a key. Sometimes they have more than one key. If it sees the key, then it says, ah, I have to read this and I have to put this into my memory and I have to know that's what this
All
thing
right.
is. So you can put in descriptions, you can put in tags, you can put in dialogue. All of that gets associated with it. And um, if you have some word that's elsewhere in the lore book in your description, so if it says, I'll go down to air elemental, um, if I can find
It'd
it.
be AIR.
I cannot. Yeah,
Yeah.
alphabets. Air elemental is right above me. So air elementals, um, it has the word elemental, and then there are other items in this lore book that have elemental associated with it. And so it can then go look at those other items and cross connect. So you can have this interconnected thing. The lore books are still a little primitive, but um, if I have what is that thing? That, my friend, is a black dragon, and I hit send. It will then. Well, it doesn't. Oh no, this one is a black dragon or skull dragon, as they sometimes are called. That's actually
Okay.
in the lore book. So if I go to the lore book and go down to black dragon, it did some crazy stuff too, and it will do that. It has in here that they are also known as skull dragons. So it plucked out that detail and put it into the text. So building a lore book means that it can build relevant text to that individual. And other things you can do in lore book is you can put in dialogue so that it gets a sort of idea of how that character
Okay.
speaks. And so then it can say, oh, I know how that works. So I have this one. I also have the exact same phrase, but with a My Little Pony lore book. So now if I do this, it should um it doesn't well, let's see. Do you do something else? Well, okay. So it's not I think if I just put dragon, maybe it will get the better idea. But I don't think I don't know if it's plucking things out of the lore book. I should. Uh, yeah, there we go. They're the scariest thing in Equestria. So it automatically pulled out of the lore book. I
Right.
had to retry a couple of times until it figured something out. But let's take a look at what it says about dragons in here. Maybe I was just expecting too much from it. Dragons, drakes, dragons. Dragons are the scaly, are a race of scaly creatures. They're usually rude. Didn't get much out of it. But um, it does. It is able to pull stuff out of the lore book to know what's going on and that sort of thing. And what's going to happen is like if you're my example is James Cameron. If you're James Cameron and you've got this your blue naked cat person uh, world, you make a lore book. You make a world in the
Mhm.
computer. You get the AI to source that. You can own you can own that lore book. That's copyrightable. That's controllable,
Right.
and you let people come into your system for a fee to build their own stories.
Huh.
And you can also put user fees that yeah we own this, and if anything looks like a movie, yeah that's ours. Um,
Well, at that point, I mean, it is. You're right. It.
yeah,
I would assume it would be intellectual property of whoever built the
yeah,
lore book, and then I would guess that a script and a film developed from there would be a derivative work. That's an
yeah.
interesting idea.
So that's where they're going. That's where I think this is going. This is the Disney and that sort of. If you're one of these big IP houses,
Mhm.
eventually you're going to come around to this idea. You're going to come around to we can build this very complicated world, and then people will pay us to almost like a video game, but not quite
Hmm.
a sculpted story in this world. Or if you're a writer, you say there's the Egypt lore book. It has detailed Egypt things. I want to write a historical novel. I'm going to just go in there and I will pay them to use their lore book that they've spent years making, and maybe there's some other deals on the back end, and I'm going to write my novel with that.
Fascinating.
So that's the interesting part. Now let's talk about the thing that everyone gets upset
Let's.
about. Because let's talk about AI models. So AI models are the idea that this current thing is just on the internet. So it has all of human text in it. But you can come in here and make a model for a particular author. So, for example, I made a Jane Austen model. All of her works are public domain. I just got them off of Project Gutenberg. I uploaded them into the system, and now I have a Jane
So
Austen
I want to ask a
model.
question about that.
And
So you
yeah,
went to Project Gutenberg, and what did you put all of that text into? There's like,
I just downloaded the
okay,
text files.
and then you can upload them back
And
into the software somehow? Wow.
yeah,
Okay.
so to make a model, you click on this little goose
Okay,
icon
because that makes sense.
and you say AI model training, and you come in here, you
What?
select the files. So, like for example, if you wanted to do Hemingway, you can go under Hemingway, and this is the collected works of Ernest Hemingway. You select it, you open it. It will say it takes this many steps. This is processor
Okay.
time, um, and you give it a name. You give it a description, and then you
Wow.
start training it. Um, and that does cost money. They want you to
Okay.
have money to use their processor, but you can enter anything in there. I did tell you. I'll show you this one because this one's funny. I tried to load Hemingway and Mark Twain into the
Mhm.
model at the same time. Um, that does not work. You cannot load different authors in. This was what I discovered. I told you I ended up with a bipolar person who is obsessed with war. That was what I ended up with Hemingway, because the only commonality that found between them was war, and so it will, you know. So it starts off, they had to wait for the boats, and it was a long time to get up to them. There must have been 30 or 40 boats. They were all dead by the time they got there, but it didn't want any of them to be left behind. So, so when I asked me what to do with them, I told them to put them in the boat. So see here, it starts Hemingway and then suddenly goes Twain, in the middle of it. Um, and it can't get
Uh-huh.
the model is not advanced enough. But you can definitely hear the voice of these people, and if you stick to one author
Mhm.
instead of trying to do two and seeing what that would do. So if you go to Jane Austen, and I'm not going to put anything in, there's nothing in memory, there's no lore book, nothing. Um, it does sound very Jane Austen. It was a great deal better than I expected. It's not only pretty in the way it ought to be, but in the effect that the small window chime piece is most delightful, and I was pleased with your arrangement of the pictures. That
Mhm.
sounds like Jane Austen to me. I mean, and it's not anything that Jane Austen had ever written, although we do get an
Right.
Emma. Um, One thing the model does is it looks for the most common name of a character, and that becomes the only name it will use. Um, I don't know why that is, but that's just how it works. Um, but you can very easily write something that's kind of fun, and you can do interesting stuff with this. So here is um, I start to a story, but in memory, I say I've put in the information that it's about Thomas Mallory, a man whose business is setting time and space right when it goes wrong in the time space continuum, and I put in genre sci-fi, time travel,
Okay.
and romance. Because I thought Jane Austen didn't write enough sci-fi.
I mean, this is
Um,
known.
and so this is um, it was everywhere, but you had to know to look for it or be careful not to miss it. So it will start going through and start generating a story um, that is both sci-fi and Jane Austen. It's not
Right.
doing a great job right now, but I did send you another one that
Right.
worked out pretty well. Um, and it's this whole block of um, you know, talking about this man, Thomas Mallory, who had lived on Earth in only 32 years, but he had made a journey to the moon, and back again, and around the planet Mars. So you can see it's getting sci-fi, and it's also doing Jane Austen. Um, this is this is what people are upset about because you're stealing an author's style, and everyone complains, oh, these AIs are stealing artwork. They're not stealing artwork. If you opened up the Jane Austen model, would not be able to find a single word of Jane
Right.
Austen in it. Um, it is a way of thinking, and it won't spit out anything like Jane
Right.
Austen. It won't infringe copyrights. They say, oh, I asked for an Iron Man piece, and it looked almost exactly like this copyrighted Iron Man work, and it's showing Iron Man in the superhero pose, and yeah, okay, dude, that's not copyright infringement. That's how everyone draws Iron Man,
Right.
uh, and it's just that. But it this is this is the most fun I had with it. Writing a sci-fi story in the style of Jane Austen. That was interesting, um, because it makes you feel like you're doing something that you couldn't normally do.
Right.
I could not normally write a story in the style of Jane Austen, but with the tool, I can. Um, and that's going to be that's going to be a difficult conversation. And I mean, the difficult conversation about this. Well, okay, so that's the tool. I really want to use this to write something, but at the same time, I feel like it might taint it. You know, people might say, "Well, you didn't write it," and it's like,
See,
"No, I didn't write it."
I mean, so that's the point that I struggle with,
Mhm.
because what this really gets down to is a question that might be unanswerable: is what is creativity?
Yeah,
And we've been fighting with this question during the age of reproduction.
yeah,
Um, the YouTuber Thought Slime has a interesting video. I don't entirely agree, but he goes back to I think it's Lichtenstein, who like took comic book artists' images and blew them up and recontextualized them by putting them in
yeah,
a gallery, right?
right,
So this is a debate that goes back at least that far, probably goes back even farther when you come right down to it. What
right.
what is creativity? Where is the creativity? Because like at the very least, you've already stated that if you just click send over and over and over, you're going to get complete gibberish, right?
You're not going to get complete gibberish. You're going to get the most boring story you have ever read.
All right. You'll get
I
something
did,
that goes nowhere. You'll get something with no creativity, right?
yes,
So,
currently.
well, I'm gonna still argue.
Okay.
I suspect that it will come closer and closer to looking at like really mediocre creativity. But it still has to be drawn from something. So the other analogy that I keep coming back to is a Star Trek Next Generation episode. I don't know if you remember this one, but Data and Geordi are going to the holodeck. I all these AIs, I keep thinking about the holodeck in Star Trek because that's what
Yeah,
this is heading towards. Something where you can give a computer broad parameters and it's going to fill in all the detail. And
yeah,
so they go and they've played through all of the Sherlock Holmes mysteries, and Data is dissatisfied. So he says to the computer, "Make me a new one." But because it's still pulling from all the pieces from um, the existing works, he's able to see all the connections and guess the ending because there's no creativity
right.
in there. The computer still can't add that. And I kind of suspect that that is going to be a limiting factor.
So let me give you a scenario here. Let's say, um, I've shown you how you can sort of build context around it to shape the way it goes.
Right.
Um, so let's go a little bit further in the future. We have a huge database built, for let's say Avatar, the Avatar universe. James
Mhm.
Cameron's Avatar. We log in. Cameron's Avatar. We come in and it says, "What do you want?" And you say, you know, I want a story um, about these characters having a romance, in the enchanted caves, which will probably be, his next movie. He did a tree, he did a water, he's going to go underground next. um,
You might be right about that.
Dude, if we're talking creativity, Avatar is not the greatest point to start with, but in the caves of forever, where they have another, um, MacGuffin material,
Mhm.
and so, and I wanted I wanted to have the structure like Romeo and Juliet, but surprise me with the ending. You know,
I see, I guess I don't see that as being the endpoint that you do, because I that's so that's still gonna get, mediocre fanfic is what
right?
that is, right? So
So
the
yeah,
door to mediocre fanfic is wide open.
I want to
Sure.
con- I want to continue. I want to continue on this line because I want to bring in AI art. And the thing AI art started about a year ago, and it made a bunch of nonsensical, multi-limbed creatures, and we're like, oh, what a joke. And now it is eating the lunch of artists because it is doing all of the fan art that they made money off of. You know, draw me a picture of Iron Man flying through the sky with explosions. All right, that's $100. Now I can put the exact same thing in, and it will generate. It doesn't generate the original arts, the unique arts, but that's not the moneymaker.
I mean, I guess I wonder, I mean,
So,
how
so
much commerce is that actually taking into? And also, we had this moment where, in one of our game streams, we were talking about,
mhm,
a team of footballers in Hydra uniform,
right.
right? I could not go to any AI that I can think of right now and get them to draw something that specific
Currently,
currently.
I mean, again, the thing I do not like the argument that of I cannot get like
Okay,
this
fine.
tool,
So I have a whole new argument for you.
but I want to finish my argument first.
I want to finish my
I
argument.
no, but I'm saying you can make a system that will eat the lunch of the low end um, fiction, and there's a lot of that. There's a lot of authors out there just making money doing the predictable, cliched, but ultimately entertaining stuff, and that's going to be eaten up by this. Just like all of the fan art is being eaten up by AI art. The unique stories, what's going to happen is you're going to get authors using this tool. They're going to come in, they're going to generate stuff, they're going to be able to crank it out um, fast, and then be able to make a bunch of very unique novels that they can get in the market in a turnaround of months instead of years.
Right. So you're
And
going to see creators who are now able to create things that they weren't able to create before and was possibly holding them back from being creative and participating. I There
right,
is a part of me that really wonders how many people would be buying art from small artists that are now not, you know? Uh, uh,
so
I don't
I
know how
did
to answer that. I
I
really.
yeah, I did the convention circuit, and I had comics and people were selling comics. And we would go to these conventions, and every one of these comic creators, whole comic row, would glare at the one artist down the road that was drawing My Little Pony, art pieces, because that person sold 5 times more than what we were selling, and that is the business that's going to be affected.
No, but
You
flip
know,
yourself into the customer mindset, right?
right?
Were those people at those conventions? Are they now going to not go to a convention and interact with an artist that they like because they can get it made on a computer? That's what I don't think so. I don't think that they're there just for the art. I
Okay.
think that they're getting some
I,
other thing about that. I think that the people who are going to be using this for fan art or something in that way weren't going to be buying it in the first place.
I'm I I think I somewhat disagree. I think this will eat into a lot of the money, a lot of the cheap, easy money.
Mhm.
There, and this is cheap and easy money that wasn't available before the internet.
Mhm.
It used to be that if you were an artist, you went to work for an advertising agency. That's how you made your money. You know, you couldn't just go on the internet and say, "Hey, here's my PayPal. Give me $20 and I'll draw you a picture of whatever." You know, that was, and that is a business that has come into existence in the last 10, 15 years.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing that business ending.
Yeah.
So you can't say it was a good run, but it was a run.
So I guess the other side to that is I worked as a retail photographer,
Yep.
until 2008 or so, and the quality of photographs that we could produce, were it was not hard for people to come to a similar level of quality with their phones, right?
Yep.
So the service we were providing just wasn't in need anymore.
Yep.
And there's a part of me, that's because whenever this argument comes out, it sounds like you're completely dismissing a whole slew of people who have trained all their lives to do something. Um, but the truth is, technology replaces skills all the time,
Yeah.
and we have to figure out how to. But the thing is, I do think it's a transition, right? And people
Yeah.
will adapt, and some people get hurt by it, like capitalism and evolution. They suck for the individual.
Yeah.
um, but the other side of it is that when you look at this as a tool, it lowers the bar of entry for a lot of people as well. And people who have struggled or have blocks in trying to be creative or creating something on their own are now going to have access to a whole slew of opportunities to create for themselves.
I agree. Um, I I I was there was a part of so here's the thing. There's two things. Neither of these are good points. So one, and this point pains me to say, I am much more ego driven than you are, Rob. I am much more ego driven with my creations. I want to be patted on the head and told I'm a good boy. You know, I want that thrill of someone saying, "Oh, I really liked that line you wrote in that book, and wow, that really moved me." And if that line happens to be something that the computer spat out, that a little piece of me will die if I get complimented on that.
I have an anecdote
But
about that, but continue on.
that that is my that is one of my hangups about that. And I forgot my second point, so tell me your anecdote while remember my second point.
So, unfortunately, I can't cite the source, but I do recall
Mhm.
reading an interview or maybe a blog post from one of the writers from Angel. And
Mhm.
they would relate that very often they would meet a fan and they'd say, "Oh, I love your work. I saw this episode and I love that episode and I love the line, blah, blah, blah." And they'd be like, "Yeah, Josh Whedon walked into the room and threw that line out."
Yeah, that's exactly what it feels like.
Yeah.
Like when this little story, um, I really enjoy, but I gotta tell you, I there's two problems. First of all, I have no idea how the story goes, so I can't finish
Okay.
it. There's no plan for it, and if you don't have a plan, it's worthless. It's just sort of fooling around. But a lot of the things I really enjoy,
Well,
I didn't
so
write.
again,
It's
like
like,
this comes into the question, where's the creativity? Because
Mhm.
so thinking about the tool of what was it called? The World Book?
The
the lore
lore
book,
book.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, like, I think I would be that might not be true. Um, but imagine pouring yourself into this lore book, right? Because you
Right.
you you have struggled doing the connective tissue, the words, describing characters, all those things that are supposed to happen, but you have all these other ideas, right? That is still a hard amount of creative work.
Oh yeah.
I do not create worlds in that way at all. I basically, my best genre is fairy tale
Yeah.
because it is one dimensional and simple,
Yeah.
right? Um, and I hope that this will get credit for the creativity that goes into that. And if you built up a lore book like that, and then you use a tool to get some of the words, because you're not just hitting send over and over and over.
Yeah.
You're looking at it, you're reading it, and you're saying, well, that's stupid. That doesn't make sense. You're getting inspired by it and adding the new
Mhm.
prompt to drive it somewhere. At some point, you're coming up with the actual story itself.
Yeah.
The
Yeah. No.
creativity looks different, but that doesn't mean it's not there.
So, yeah, no, and you compared this to being a director versus being a writer, and that really does feel like what it is. You've got all these different pieces that you are managing and providing the vision and direction to, and you are the one that is choosing. Yeah, this sentence works. No, this sentence doesn't work. This sentence needs to be tweaked. So you are. It is a intensive creative experience. There is nothing to say this isn't creative. It is creative in a different way than I'm used to in writing a story, and it is a different sort of satisfaction you get on out of it.
Yes.
And it is you have to take joy in the whole. You have to say the whole thing. That is my creation. That is what I take joy out of,
Yep.
and not look at that clever thing I did there. I'm pretty smart. See how clever I was with that line. Go quote that line. Go put it on a T-shirt to show how clever I am, which is an entirely different thing.
I guess.
Um,
And like you say, maybe this is where we're different because I find enjoyment in getting these computers to spit out those things that I couldn't. Like
yeah,
my little kitty cat Cthulhu drawing that happened completely accidental. I
yeah.
feel an ownership to. I love it.
Oh yeah,
For one of our upcoming game videos, I fed in the text of our opening and our ending into Chat GPI and asked it for like taglines for a thumbnail. And it came up with some great ones. They were too long. So I said, make it shorter. And it filled in a skill I don't have. And I made a thumbnail from it. And it just is the most thumbnail-y thumbnail I've ever made. And that's great. I don't care,
yeah.
because how different for me is that if it was my idea or the computer's idea, or oh my god, Eric, I need to put something up, what did we talk
Yeah,
about in the game last week?
yeah, no,
But it's
and,
still a piece in the end that I really enjoy.
oh yeah, yeah, no, and I am enjoying this tool quite a bit. I will give you my other bad point,
Okay.
and this is that the gravy train for writing mediocre fiction that a small portion of the people will enjoy, and you can make a modest living off of that's
Yeah, that's
ending,
gone.
and I wanted to be on that gravy train. That was the part that was I was like, one day I can make mediocre fiction.
Yeah,
I can achieve that goal.
yeah.
Um, and that nope, that that is the standards are going to rise. I mean that's what happens with these tools. You get flooded. Okay, so early 2000s movies in the early 2000s suck because that was the CGI revolution, and that was the period of time where where Hollywood said, we don't have to put story on the screen, we just have to put spectacle, and people will watch it. That's what's going to happen with this. At first, it's just going to be a flood of mediocrity. It's just going to be everywhere. And people at first are going to be like, hey, I can now get a story about literally anything I want. I you sometimes read these stories where the protagonist is so freaking boring because it has to fit every possible characteristic of a possible reader. It's like, our main character likes to read,
Ugh.
and that's their only characteristic. And it's like, because they're reading a book, and we know you're reading a book because you're reading this book, and we're not going to go out on the any other limb for this. They're not even going to drink apple juice because some people are allergic to apple juice, and we don't want to offend that audience. And that doesn't have to happen anymore. That now you don't have to worry about that. You can have stories where the characters are uniquely suited to what you want to see. And I don't want to say you, because I don't think anyone ever really wants to see you, but they do want to see a unique character they can identify.
I mean, it sounds to me like you think that people are gonna say, I want to read a story about X, and go online and ask the computer to write a story about X.
Yes,
Huh.
I do. When I'm at work doing my coding, when I am bored out of my skull and I'm like, I have to do this tedious coding task that requires about 25% of my brain, I want to occupy, or 75% of my brain, I want to occupy that other 25% of that brain with something that is light and entertaining, but doesn't challenge me much.
So
And and I would pay for a service that would just give me nonstop, mildly interesting stories.
okay, but do you think that this is going to create stories with so little effort that you
This
can
won't.
do this as opposed to finding an author who puts in some amount of effort?
This won't. This tool will not. This tool, the current technology will not. But technology advances,
Hmm.
and it's gonna it's gonna get there. Mediocre fiction is by definition formulaic, and formulaic is what computers do.
Okay.
That is a business model that is going to be made.
I
And
ju I guess I just feel I will still want to pay you to write the initial prompt
oh,
instead
you
of
you
thinking of that initial prompt myself.
I think there will be a business for that, and I think there will be still a market for really unique and different fiction. But I think that there are a number of books, and okay, um, I don't. I'm going to out an author that I really enjoy,
Okay.
but is formulaic, and this is the Bobaverse
Yeah.
set of stories. Really entertaining.
Yeah.
Definitely worth reading. Definitely worth reading. That could have been generated by an AI.
You think so?
I think so. I mean, the actual plot of those books is pretty light. It's a lot of attitude and fun. Um, Maybe not a best example because it's humor, and humor is something that is hard for a computer to do.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
maybe not
like,
humorous,
I do
but
hear you. I've read some of those Regency with Dragons stories, so,
yeah, there we go. There we go. There
you
we go.
know.
Regency with Dragon. Yeah, yeah. If it's not funny, but historic fiction is really in trouble
Mm.
because what you do then is you get a PhD in that historic period to build a lore book who knows nothing about writing and has no interest in writing, and you pay them to build this perfect replica of Egypt, and the computer keeps track of where everything is, and it's perfect, and then you sell that as historically accurate novels. And if you want a romance and a romance story set in Egypt, we'll give you the generic romance plot. You know, poor girl, slave girl, and pharaoh fall in love. You know, and it will be the generic romance plot, but it will be a historically accurate novel. Everything down to the finest detail will be perfectly researched. Perhaps not the bathing habits because that ruins romances, but beyond that, perfect. And and that's going to appeal to a lot of people. And there'll still be an author. There'll still be someone creating the work,
Yep.
but it will be a team effort now.
Yeah.
It will be a company. It will be one company owns the Egypt lore book and hires authors to write in the Egypt setting. James Cameron owns the Avatar universe and hires authors to use the lore book to write in that setting. This is what Star Wars did before
Yeah.
it undid it.
Yeah. I mean, I guess ultimately, and some of this I can't tell because I don't always know if I'm reading tone right. Because a lot of times I hear this discussion and it sounds like people are like energetic or afraid or angry, and I guess I'm just like, yeah, okay, that's the way it's gonna be.
Yeah, you're energetic or afraid or angry if it's your livelihood.
I guess,
If
yeah,
you're an artist who is making money selling uh, fan art and selling art over the internet, AI art is terrifying. If you're a writer who like, if you're someone like me who's like, oh, I wanted to be that mediocre writer, that people say, oh yeah, he's the guy that did the series of stories about a guy who had a rocket for a foot, and it's like, yeah, that was sort of fun, and I just, I got it because it was just sort of interesting, unique, and it's not that great, but it's not horrible. If you want to be that guy, you don't want some damn computer coming in and taking your thing. I don't want to see Dan Brown being able to triple his output even further. The guy releases, or not Dan Brown. What's
uh, that's
not
the
not
Angels
Dan
and
Brown?
Demons. The
Yeah, Dan Brown. There's a different guy, and I keep on forgetting his name.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean,
um,
some of those people they produce that much because they have ghostwriters.
well, yeah. Uh, Maybe I'll look that up. I'm going to look that up because I am uh, I am okay. So damn it. I did the master class with this guy, and one of the things he talked about was working with other writers because he no longer wrote his own books. He just got other people to write it for him. Um,
Well, there you
but
go. Just get a
now
computer
I
to
got
write
it.
it for you.
Well, yeah, no, I mean that we're going to see this, but I mean this is already a model.
Hmm.
Um, like, okay, so I just saw a story today. It said BuzzFeed will use AI technology to write its stories, and I looked at that and I said, wait, it wasn't using AI technology to write its stories. Wait, what? I mean, I thought I didn't actually think humans worked at BuzzFeed. That
Right.
was that was,
Have you
but yeah, I
actually
mean,
read as BuzzFeed stories as opposed to just look at the little pictures or
yeah,
whatever that's on there?
yeah, it's just a headline and pictures. That's
Right.
what I thought it was AI all this time. I'm sort of surprised, but yeah. No, I mean, and it's there's a whole bunch of things where, like, if you go onto Amazon, there's a whole bunch of people in business of writing tons of novels.
Yes.
The lit RPG genre. Um, this is a genre that is all about volume. It's
Yep.
all about writing tons of stories really fast.
Yes. And you're right.
Um,
This is going
and
to be very bad for them at that level. Absolutely.
no, it will be great for them initially because they'll use it to write instead of releasing a story every 2 months, they'll release a story every week, and they will flood the algorithm. It's like if you want to see a dinosaur romance, there's going to be one dude who's writing about romance with dinosaurs, which is actually a thing, by the way.
Sure.
Um,
We know.
we know. I just that amuses me. It's like, yeah, okay, the internet. There's a romance between. Nope, it exists. It's not news. But yeah, they'll start using this. Probably already are using it to crank out stuff, but it's not going to be great stuff. And then it'll be used by everyone
Mhm.
eventually, and it's just going to be a lot more stuff out there. But that makes it hard to make a living unless you are either cranking out tons of crap or you are really good.
Yep.
Um, and I wanted to be mediocre.
I'm sorry. So I'm
But
gonna hold out hope.
yeah,
I'm gonna hold out hope that as you explore and dig into this and enjoy and have fun, that somehow you find a way that this actually unleashes that creativity that's pent up inside you, and you are able to be not just you are able to find a path where you're not that mediocre writer, but with the aid of these tools, you can become an excellent one.
well, thank you. So that's a thanks for joining me on this, and I enjoyed showing this to you, and it's exciting and scary, and the future is here, man.
Yeah,
Really
that's what I was
interesting.
going to say. That's what the future is: exciting and scary.
Yeah.
Well, and thank you for sharing it. This is a fascinating tool, and
Mhm.
I'm gonna push myself to err on the side of the excitement because I think that it can do a lot of cool things.
Okay.
All right, and thank you all for joining us and listening to that out. Have a good day, everyone.